on my birthday. I will try to guide you through a bit to audits and inspections and what we have learned in the past couple of years, what's going on in audits and inspections. So it's my pleasure to be with you, and I can tell you I have a longer experience in pharmacovigilance and drug safety. My next slide is what I'm going to talk about. We're going to talk about audits and how it's different from inspections, trends, the type of inspections, who is targeted during audits of inspections, and I will tell you that if I use the word audit or the word inspection, you can just use both for it, because an inspection, of course, is something different than an audit, but the focus of inspections and audits are more or less the same. I will focus a bit more on FDA versus the EMA approaches, how to prepare yourself, what kind of tasks you have to perform at notification of an inspection or an audit. Then people come after the inspection, and some general do's and don'ts, because people can make quite some mistakes there. Also, some common audits and inspections at the moment, and how you can minimize those risks against them. And then in the end, Ram will talk a bit about Synowledge expertise and services, and if there are any Q&A, you can ask that during the session or at a later stage. An inspection is an official investigation and a verification of data, but it is done by an official regulatory authority. For instance, the EMA, FDA, MHRA, BfArM, INSM. Those are all these local and more regional or global regulatory authorities that can do an inspection. An audit is the same, but it is performed by a non-governmental party. It can be done by a partner, by clients, or an internal group, like for instance your own QA department can do an audit of your systems. Why do we have audits and inspections? So first of all, the inspections are mainly done because of public health. So people, the regulatory authorities, like to know whether you really comply with regulations. They also like to monitor industry more or less, and sometimes they do an inspection because there's a problem. It can also be political, and it can also be because of risk management procedures. An audit is normally more due to business reasons. For instance, if you take over a compound from another company, due diligence, compliance with SOPs. Of course, it can be problem investigation as well. And of course, following an inspection and there has been a finding, an audit internally can be started to see if the results are more in the right way than before. So it can be a process audit, it can be quality management system, etc., etc. What we see these days is that, of course, there are many audits and kind of inspections. There are audits and inspections concerning quality of the products, but what we see these days is that there's highly focused on the safety of medicines. We also have to realize that inspections results cross the border. So it's not anymore that an inspection that happens in the United States or in, let's say, in Czechia will have no impact on other countries. It will have impacts. Inspection results cross the borders. You also see that co-inspectors of other countries join the inspectors. And in Europe, we have the GVP, the pharmacovigilance module number 3, where inspections and others are regulated. There's also freedom of information between the EU member states, United States, Canada, actually also Japan. And the nasty thing is that FDA does not announce inspections, they're just there. In Europe, we at least have a couple of months to prepare ourselves, but FDA is just in front of the door and say, hi, I'm going to inspect you. FDA offices are also abroad. There's FDA offices in India, China, and South America. We can have routine inspections. That can be, for instance, the IT infrastructure. that gets inspected on a periodic basis, can be annual. In pharmacovigilance, we see that the inspections in general are every 3 years. They're a bit busy at the moment, but in general it's every 3 years if there's nothing going wrong. There can be an issue. That means that the health authority has been alerted. Late reporting, non-reporting still happens, unfortunately. And then the inspectors come and ask you to ask what's going on. Due diligence, that is with contracts, takeover, in or out licensing agreements, and you can be sometimes in a lucky or not lucky state that you have a so-called bystander inspection. That means that a company or a CRO is being inspected. They see that there are relationships with pharmaceutical industry or with CROs, and then they come to look at the other company as well, either as part of the actual activity that the company or the CRO is doing, or they look at the entire company. This is an important slide, I think. It's in the past it was inspection, audits, pharmacovigilance departments trouble, right? But that is not the case anymore. At this moment, the targeted people or targeted departments during an audit or an inspection is the entire company. It's partners, distributors, vendors, contractors, suppliers, CROs, study sites, IT, process, archive, tracks, you name it, it will be there. And they look at everything. They want to have data in advance, they look at job descriptions, they look at training records, if everybody is well trained, they look at your databases, security settings, coding, advertising, crisis plan, and so on and so on. And if you show or mention something extra, it will be a target of the audit or the inspection. There's some small differences between FDA and EMA. The FDA, they're free, but they're not announced, and they're regulated by Chapter 53 of Regulator Manual 2008 Guidance for GPV Practices. Normally they come with 1 or 2 inspectors. They like to see demonstrations, what you're doing. They like to talk to the people, interviews, and they review documents without the company being present. And they say, yes, we talk with other regulatory authorities. The EMA charges. They have a daily rate of around 3,500 euros, but they give an advance notice between 1 and 3 months. It's guided by GVP Module 3 and still a bit by Volume 9, because Volume 9 is still in place till the end of 2015, but in the meantime GVP Module 3 on audits and inspections is the leading directive. They can come with at least 3. That's my experience, 3 to 5 inspectors. Of course, they want to have demonstrations and see what's going on. They will talk to the people. They will also document, review documents without the company being present. And yes, we talk with the other regulatory authorities. What can they do? FDA, they can make a report of deficiencies. They can publish the inspection report, which is because of the Freedom of Information Act is available to almost everybody. They can have a public warning letter. They can seize the product. They can violate you with a penalty fee, and they can even send you to jail at a certain moment. EMA more or less has the same things, but they're a bit more, how do you say that? They're a bit more quiet. They first start with, of course, the inspection report, and then they say to you, we think that you can improve here, you can improve there, and if there are critical findings, you can have a re-inspection. But they can also do warning in writing. They can also naming the non-compliant marketing authorization holder. They can put into place an urgent safety restriction, and in the worst case, they can suspend the product. What should you know? I think that it's important when the company is being notified that when somebody comes, that you look very carefully in your departments or department, what is the scope and the focus of the exact audit or inspection. Who's coming? Is a regulatory authority, is another company, is a vendor. Who should you inform? In principle, you should inform a lot of people, but who are the most important people to inform? Which SOPs we have ready? you probably have to prepare materials that are requested in advance, and you have to update documents that are outdated. Most of the times, I think that in companies, documents are being updated every 2 years, but that is not always the case. So if there are outdated documents, please update them. Train your departments and train your staff that will be interviewed, not only in what they can concerning their jobs and what they have to tell and not to tell, but also what this inspection is about, and that they should be prepared for nasty questions as well. In that time, when you between the notification time and the actual coming of the inspectors, which is, like I said, more the case in Europe as in the United States, you should keep a communication with the inspectors to ensure that they come on the right dates that they set, and that the scope of the inspection is still the same as before. Then the people arrive. They ring the bell and they say, "Hello, I'm FDA inspector such and so, and in America it's very common that you verify the credentials. Are you really sure this is the guy that is coming?" And many times it is allowed to give a call to the FDA to see if these are really the people that they say they are. So you have their ID and you call the FDA and see if they are the people that they are. You don't have to do that every day. If there's an inspection going on for 2 or 3 days, I would not call to the FDA every day to see if the credentials of these people are correct. In Europe, it's less common. In Europe, you verify the credentials, that's for sure, but you don't call to the EMA or the MHRA to ask if they are really the people that they say, because actually you have this information already before. You should not leave inspectors alone, because some like to run around and talk to your staff without you knowing, and that is not always beneficial. Of course, then they have to go to the toilet. You can say where they are, where the toilets are, but you don't have to accompany them there, although there are some companies that do that as well. Inform the QA and the head of the relevant department, who is the process owner, that the inspectors are there. Convene the team as per your plan, and what is almost always highly appreciated is a tour through the facility. So you just throw them around and say, this is where these people work, this is where these people work. And if you have a manufacturer company, then you can also show your production plans. You start your meetings, your documentation, and be sure that everything that you give to them is marked as confidential. At a certain moment, it's over. That's the nice thing of an inspection and an audit. It ends. Make sure that all the key staff is available. Summarize the results factually. The inspectors will do that, but you have to do that yourself as well. So you have to make a record of the entire inspection. Many times there's a writer that puts everything down what's been discussed and so on. It's important to inform senior management on the preliminary results, especially, of course, when they're major, or even worse, when there are critical findings. But it's important to inform senior management on the preliminary results of the inspection, and immediately, but I don't say the same evening, but at least the next morning, start your corrective and preventive action plan, your CAPAs. The longer you wait with that, the longer it will be disruptive to the normal process. So, after an inspection, what do? Well, if you write back, if you get your inspection report, good common sense is that you want to tell the regulatory authorities that you want to comply with current legislation. You display good intentions. You accept the inspector's authority, although that doesn't mean that you agree to every single finding that they make, but you have to accept that they have a certain authority. Describe correcting and actions for findings and preventive to avoid future findings of the same kind. So at the one time, if there's a finding, even if it's a minor finding, you have to correct that, but you also have to write down what will install so that future findings will not take place. Also very important is to instate timelines. It's actually CAPA should be smart. So they should be precise, and they should also have timelines when you think that the implementation is correct. Sometimes the regulatory authorities want that you do it a bit faster than you are able to do it, but that you have then to indicate it yourself. Each finding should be separately indicated, and like I said, if you disagree, if that's can be the case that you disagree for a finding or for the reason of a finding, tell this clearly and why to the inspectors. General do's and don'ts. Stay polite. I think that I know some inspectors, especially the Dutch inspectors. I know one Dutch inspector, let's put it that way. I know one Dutch inspector that can tease you until you're almost finished. Still stay polite. It's polite at all times. Prepare for very long working days. Expect the unexpected. Don't guess. Do not answer hypothetical questions. If they say, in case you would have that and that, what would you, that is a hypothetical question. You don't answer that. You only answer facts. Don't push. And if there are silences, don't volunteer information. Sometimes people think, oh, I said something wrong. Let's now tell something that is right, or you think it's right. They will immediately inspect what you said that you think was right, and sometimes that can go in the wrong way. These days, what you say or has been done or has been implemented, you need written proof. So you need, for instance, for your signal management process, you need documentation, you need minutes. If you say that you have improved your CAPAs, you need minutes about that. Never lie, and don't talk money. There are a couple of findings that we see these days that are really common. And first of all is in Europe is the QPPV function, the Qualified Person for Pharmacovigilance, which is actually not anymore an EU function, but actually a global function. And what you see is that they sometimes find that the EU QPPV doesn't have enough expertise or doesn't have the oversight. I think many times the expertise is there, but the oversight is not there. I will come back to that a bit later. The PV personnel, lack of expertise, lack of training. Lack of expertise, probably not, but lack of training, yes, that I see quite often. In the organization, that there is inadequate management of the drug portfolio, no control over your affiliates, partners, service providers. Safety data exchange agreements are extremely important. You need a safety data exchange agreement with every affiliate, but also with your service providers and with your partners that you work with. And in Japanese companies, for instance, there are many partners. And because many Japanese companies still don't market their compounds in other countries, but they do it via partners, or you see it in American or European companies where they market it in South America, and the safety data exchange agreements are not okay. A very, very interesting thing is resources. I will also come back to that. And that, for instance, the inspectors can find that due to the amount of work or safety data reports or safety data exchange agreement or whatever, that there are insufficient resources within the company, which could be a good reason, for instance, to contract things out. Handling of safety data. Poor individual case reports, poor periodic safety update reports, but also they look at development safety update reports. Development safety update reports are not part of the GVP module in Europe, but they're part of the GCP module in clinical trials. Sorry. Okay, It can also be that there's insufficient ongoing evaluation of the safety profile. For instance, no process for a continuous assessment of the safety profile, your benefit risk, the signal management, etc. Training for signal detection, very important. And what you also find these days is a slow process to update reference documents. Many times, and I see that in my experience as well, is that the company and the safety department, at a certain moment, they find a new signal. They agree to implement it in the core safety data information of the company, but it takes months before it goes in the SPC or in the patient leaflet. One time, there was a company that thought they did it on time, but they needed some time for translation. And the UK MHRA did do an inspection, and they told the company that it was not necessary to translate English into English, and that's why they were too late this updating on time a reference document into the SPC. Computerized systems, validation, system not suitable. We know that there are a couple of vendors around the world that have extremely well computerized systems, but in each company you have to validate it or it should be suitable. We have RSG, we have Argus, we have some others, Empirica Trace, but the validation and to describe the validation is very important. Quality management system, no SOPs, no CAPAs, still happens. Regulatory aspects, so no or late submissions and no process of deviation. So even if you decide at a certain moment this is not necessary to report, it should be documented. Hoopla, we want to quick. If you want to mitigate for the EU QPPV findings, let me see. Yeah, I'm here. It's very important that the marketing authorization holder has a correct infrastructure to deal with the EU QPPV. So the EU QPPV should have access to the data, new safety concerns, ongoing and completed clinical trials, contractual arrangements, especially the safety data exchange agreements, procedures that are relevant to pharmacovigilance used across the organization and to the PV databases. Also, there should be information about checks, audits, CAPAs, etc. And of course, compliance. This is something extremely interesting. In the past, a company just expanded their portfolio. They found another company who had a very nice product and they took it into their own product portfolio before notifying anybody. At this moment, the marketing authorization holder must notify the EU QPPV. And the QPPV, as part of the due diligence, should look at the current PV system of the other company, their own, and whether they are able to take this product. And of course, the QPPV should be informed about safety data exchange agreements and has the authority to request an amendment when they think that's necessary. More management responsibilities, which make your probability of finding, let's say, a major or critical finding less is a good quality system documentation, good SOPs. That you have the changes of the PV system and its quality system are adequately controlled and documented. You see that these days in the so-called pharmacovigilance master file. I think that's GVP module 2. Availability of sufficient resources and that training is provided so that the people are well trained, like I do today. Appropriate infrastructure, regulatory reviewing of the PV system, etc. And last but not least is that there is continuously investigation of any concern that has to do with non-adherence to the requirements or the quality of the pharmacovigilance system. Higher management, and not only the higher management that is the head of the safety department, but also higher up, is motivating staff members, based on shared values, trust and freedom to speak and act with responsibility. That means that if somebody has a concern, they are openly allowed to talk about it. Also, recognition of staff contributions within the organization. You don't need to have a system of the best employee of the month, but if somebody makes a real contribution to the system that helps, it should be recognized. And of course, good assigning of roles, responsibilities, authorities, etc., to help to implement these all these issues throughout the organization. You need good facilities and equipment for pharmacovigilance. It should be properly location, cannot be in a room that is continuously overheated or over cold. They should have the tools to fulfill the pharmacovigilance objectives. Should be a good infrastructure to support the critical processes. Pharmacovigilance is one of the critical, business critical processes in the company. A good risk management principle, that means that if a new risk is detected or sought to be detected, that there's a good process in signal detection, for instance, or in your risk management plans, that you can check, that you can test, that you can validate, and that you have the right equipment to take care of those. And you do, inspectors do not expect that everything that happens is completely controlled, but they expect you have the processes in place that you can control. Training, I think, is very important. Qualified staff is an essential condition to accomplish your pharmacovigilance objectives. There should be a basic training and there should be a continuous training. And everybody in the company should be trained in case an adverse event comes in, for instance, what to do with it. A process to control training outcomes, a kind of test, and like I said, all staff members must understand how to handle safety issues. Okay, then we come close to the end. Compliance management is that PV data are continuously monitored, they're evaluated, they're completed, they're good follow-up, there's scientific evaluation, there's good reporting of ADRs, for instance, to the Eurovigilance database or the FDA database. There's an effective communication with competent authorities, that your medical product information is up to date. That's very important. I see that so often. I stress it again, I see so often that a signal is detected and the safety department decides together with regulatory and medical and whoever to put it in the product information, and it takes months or even years before it's really in. Appropriate communication of relevant safety information to healthcare professionals. Many times we think that communicating with regulatory authorities is enough. It's not enough. The healthcare professionals are our real target, and secondly, the patients. Okay, what do we have of components for our GVP quality system? We have SOPs. SOPs, working instructions, manuals. We have more than when I started about 30 years ago in pharmacovigilance. We have many more SOPs, and you should also have a number of SOPs that are still workable, but you should have SOPs, you should have working instructions, you should have manuals. You also should have a quality record, so that you document what you achieve to be an outcome or give a proof about certain performed activities. Resource management is very interesting. No, I should not say it like that. If pharmacovigilance goes to senior management and say we don't have enough people, we need more, many times they start to laugh and say, come on, you are a cost department anyway, and how can you deal with that? But the pharmacovigilance master file demands that there's a resource management module in it. So how do you deal with your resources? Can the company be transparent enough that they have enough people to do what they have to do? Are the job descriptions really defining the duties of the managerial and the supervisory staff? Is there a good organizational chart defining the hierarchical relationship? And last but not least, is there record management about that? How to prepare yourself with audits and inspections? First of all, you need to have an SOP or a plan that is regularly updated and trained. You should have access to the key personnel, also on Friday evening or on the weekend. Where they are, how can we reach them? I remember once there was a problem. It was not an inspection, it was a small crisis, and it happened on Friday evening, and the entire general management was on how do you call that, a meeting, off-site meeting in Malta. It was impossible to get to them, and that is not how it should be. You should have access to facilities. You should have a good meeting room. You should be sure, it sounds a bit funny, that you have snacks and refreshments, that you have a telephone, you have e-communication, and hopefully you have a telephone for outgoing calls and incoming calls, because otherwise your phone will be busy when you want to make a call outside. Previous inspection reports should be available, CAPA should be available, and you need a document runner. You need somebody who really runs around and brings you the documents that you need. I'd now like to pass to Ram, who will tell a little bit about Synowledge expertise and services, and so far I thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much for that, Jan Willem. Just wanted to take a couple of minutes and go over what Synowledge offers in terms of expertise and services. In this slide, if you see, we are providing services to our clients across the spectrum of pharmacovigilance, all the way from ICSR processing, aggregate reporting, providing QPPV services, training in terms of drug safety processes, pre-audit and inspection exercises, and of course, help our clients in SOP writing. Now, how does this all tie up to being prepared for audit or an inspection? As a service provider, Synowledge undergoes nearly 15 to 20 audits per year by our clients, and are also a part of the inspections that our clients undergo. For example, if the FDA or the EMA is inspecting one of our clients, then as a service provider, we come under the purview of that particular inspection, and we take part in the interviews and also share the training documentation, the CAPA status, the QMS tools that we have, so that we have a transparent relationship with our clients, and also show to the inspectors that we have overall control of the process that has been serviced by Synowledge. Now, how this helps our clients is we are exposed to a wide range of audits, a wide range of auditors, as well as inspectors. So we are able to bring to the table the best practices in terms of documentation and training, which are so essential in terms of the preview processes. Having said that, I just want to take another minute and kind of go through the services that we offer. So I did talk about drug safety. We offer end-to-end case processing, medical information contact center, handling AE, PQC, and MI calls, submissions, aggregate reporting, signal detection, and QPP services. In the regulatory affairs and clinical arena, again, we help in submissions, publishing, ECT services, labeling services, and clinical data management and coding. This is supported by our robust IT department that has the application infrastructure management services, and of course, the custom application development services with us. Having said that, I will now pass it on back to Donald to help us through the Q&A session.
Thank you, Ram and Jan Willem. We've now reached, as Ram mentioned, the Q&A section of the presentation. We've had a few questions coming in, and they continue to come in as I speak. But if we run out of time here, or if questions are submitted after the event, we will respond via email or telephone directly. So the first question that we have is from Mark, and the question is, what is most challenging when you have a critical finding? Jan Willem, I would imagine that is one for you. Just bear with me, let me unmute you. Okay, there you go.
Okay. Thank you for unmuting me. The most challenging during for a critical finding is that it will disrupt your normal business process tremendously. because there's a critical finding. The inspectors will come back sooner than later, and most of the times you have very short time periods to answer. So it's if you have normally for your major or minor findings you have a couple of weeks. For a critical finding you have only a couple of days to answer. And that will disrupt your daily business. I think that the disruption of the daily business is the most challenging part. Of course, what you do not want is that the critical finding will have an impact on the financial business, but of course that is not so much part of the pharmacovigilance department as well, of the entire organization. And what you also see with the critical finding is that different departments try to blame each other. That is actually their fault. That is a critical finding and not their own. And that is also a challenge by itself.
Thank you for that, Mark. If you have any additional questions on that, please do put that in the chat window for me. So got another one in from Olga. Olga says, you mentioned QPPV is no longer just for EU. Can you talk more on that?
Okay, that's a presentation on its own. The EU QPPV, the responsibility is that they have to be responsible for the pharmacovigilance and all the data of every product that is available on the European market. So it means that if you, for instance, have products on the European market that's also marketed in Japan, in South America, in the United States, you have to get full insight of the other markets as well. And only when there is a product that is only available in South Africa or so and nowhere else, the EMA might not be so very interested. But the most important thing is that actually the EU QPPV role is a global role. So everywhere where the compound is on the market, you should be on control.
Great, thank you for that. I'm conscious that we've run way over time. We had given ourselves 30 minutes and we're now 40 minutes over. So thank you to everyone for your patience. With that, I will close the Q&A section of the webinar. Thank you to everyone for registering for today's event. If you'd like a one-on-one conversation with Jan Willem, or Ram, or any of our SMEs, please feel free to reach out. I know that the chat form of a webinar is not always the best way to get an in-depth analysis of your requirements. So please do feel free to reach out to us. You can find our contact details on our website at www.synowledge.com, or you can email us at info@synowledge.com. Thank you once again for joining us today. Bye for now.